What Blair did was he handed over power that used to sit in the hands of MPs and the Prime Minister. He handed it over to the judiciary. He handed it over to unelected bodies like the Bank of England, unelected bodies like the Climate Change Committee. So the power now sits in all of these unelected bodies, and those unelected bodies have been infiltrated by leftist ideology. And the same is true in America. You know, if you look at what has happened to the Department of Justice, if you look at what has happened to the State Department, and now, you know, Marco Rubio and Donald Trump are trying to change the State Department, and they're trying to change the bureaucracy, but they had the same issue. And the same is true in Canada, the same is true in Australia. I think it's particularly extreme in Britain because we've got the oldest bureaucracy. So there's been more, over time it's kind of ossified and, you know, but I think it's the same problem everywhere. And what the left, you know, the left changed their tactics. Their tactics used to be they would try and win elections. Their tactics now are things like lawfare. Their tactics are infiltrating institutions. Their tactics are cancelling people. Their tactics are limiting free speech. And, you know, we've seen the extreme left even use assassination as a tactic, as was the case with Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
So what we have is we are fighting a group of people who are destructionists and who use these types of tactics to influence the future. And this is why the left has been so successful at pushing the Overton window in their direction, because they've used all of these tactics and more.
When you speak of the left, are you typically what's the demographic you're referring to? Are you talking about left-wing politicians? Are you talking about these civil servants and bureaucrats? Are you talking about the activists?
All of them.
All of them.
I call them the blob.
The blob, okay.
You know, the blob. We could talk about globalists.
Sure.
It's the same group of people, and they have a set of views.
Because there is I know it's a dying breed, but there is a sort of traditional left-wing, pro-worker, pro-labor union type that does not seem to fit in that blob, no?
But they're now on our side of the argument. You know, if you look at the Trump coalition, the workers, you know, many unions came on board with Trump because they understood that they are now fighting something that is fundamentally anti-worker. It's pretty anti-human, this globalist agenda. What
do you think the goal of, so if we're going to use this term, the left, what do you think the ultimate goal is? If we're trying to, I'm not a left-winger and I never have been, but I'm trying to kind of steelman.
Maybe the left isn't a very helpful term.
I typically avoid it just because it's too great. Like obviously on the left side of the aisle, you know, people will talk about, you know, the right this and the right that and the right, and I'm often like, who do you mean? Like, am I the right, or do you mean like that? Like, and I kind of feel the same with the left. It's a little amorphous, so I don't often know what is being referred to. It's a bit like I generally try to avoid nebulous terms. So, you know, like on the left, people like to talk about, you know, systemic racism. And I don't find that a very useful term because it's too vague. It's just like, what do you specifically mean? I know what racism is, and I can identify specific incidents or individuals. But if it's just like, oh, there's just the whole system, the whole structure, I'm not like, what do you mean? Like,
but that's like it. This is all postmodernism, neo-Marxism.
Okay,
that's what it is. It's Foucault. It's these alternative power structures.
Do they know that? The people pushing this?
Some of them do. Some of them don't. There's a lot of sheep. There's a lot of useful idiots.
Yeah.
But there are some people who do understand this. Yes, they do. And you know, there are. I think people like Obama understand that. I think people like Blair understand that. I think they have a particular way of fighting his battles. But there's a lot of people who just go along to get along. I say 80 to 90% of people go along to get along.
Yeah.
That's the reality. But I would say what the defining, if we're talking about the patriotic movements we're now seeing in Europe and America, what do they fundamentally believe in? They believe in the nation state. Mm-hmm. They believe in the family. They believe in Christian values. They believe in free speech. Mm-hmm. I think those are some of the key tenets. And the other side of the argument are people who they don't believe in the nation state. Mm-hmm. They believe in universalist values. They believe in net zero ideology. They believe in this. They're anti the fundamental underpinnings of Western civilization. Mm.
Yeah. See, the reason I ask so many questions about this is because I look at some of these individuals, certainly some of the leaders, and they could be in the UK, they could be in the US, and so on. And they themselves, if you look at their personal lives often, actually they are from and have, rather, at least from the outside looking, stable families. And their life actually looks relatively socially conservative in many ways, right? So they're getting out there and they're saying all of this stuff and they're championing the LGBTQIAA2S whatever agenda, and they're saying their comments on race or their socialistic ideas or whatever. But then you look at their actual lives and I'm like, seems like you did a pretty traditional thing and that's like worked out quite well for you. But then you go up on a podium and the ideas that you're espousing are destructive towards the family unit, are destructive regarding the economy. These are the people who, they'll live in a gated community, they'll have private guards and armed security, and then they'll come out and, in the US, they'll talk about wanting to ban guns, and they'll talk about there's no borders, and they'll be wanting to let criminals out of prison. Like they're living in the safest, whitest, most affluent neighborhood available in their region, and then the policies they're espousing and the ideas they're espousing are very misaligned with their actual lives. But
this is like the elite under communism.
Yes,
they were all there in their summer homes, benefiting from great food and drink. They didn't live the lives of the peasants in the USSR, because what it shows is these ideologies don't work. Mm-hmm. They fundamentally don't work. So they have to have this dissonance between the way they're living and what they're talking about.